The Australian Financial Review.
As a kid, I hated putting on sunscreen. My parents would force me, lathering on thick, greasy and oily lotion, or I could forget about going to the beach. It didn't get much better as I got older, especially when I began wearing makeup. I mean, no one wants a shiny face. My next guests are reinventing what it means to apply sunscreen. Beck Jefford and Ava Matthews threw in their jobs to develop a sunscreen people would actually want to wear. And better yet, they wanted to create sunscreens that would sit comfortably under makeup. They were intent on creating a new category, skin screens. A sunscreen that becomes the final step in your daily skincare routine. They launched Ultra Violette in 2019, hit the shelves of cosmetics giant Sephora, and are racing to expand globally. Hi, I'm Julianne Sprague. You're listening to Female Founders, a production from the team at How I Made It. In this series, you'll hear from women who've built their businesses from scratch, how they've persevered against enormous challenges, and their daily hacks to get ahead. Ava, Beck, thank you very much for joining me today in the studio, braving Melbourne conditions. I'm really excited to talk to you both because I'm a bit of a fangirl. I did come across the brand and then I started to listen to a little bit of your story, and I just really wanted to talk to you about the journey of building Ultra Violette. Perhaps we can start with how the two of you met and explain to me the journey and what might have happened from there. Who wants to go first? Ava, maybe. When did you first come across Beck?
I first came across Beck at Mecca Brands. She actually employed me, so she was my boss.
Beck, Do you remember the interview and what you might have talked to Ava about?
Yes, I definitely do. So Ava was in someone's car in a car park in Sydney. I was in Melbourne and I was trying to make her feel comfortable. So I obviously was asking a bit about her work experience. Hang
on, I just need to interrupt. Ava, you're in a car in Melbourne and it's not your car and you're doing a job interview.
Yeah.
Can you please explain that?
I was in the car lot of Napoleon Purtis headquarters, hiding, I think, from Napoleon himself in the backseat of a colleague's car so as to not be found and pulled back into a boardroom and questioned as to why I was in the back of someone's car.
Okay. Right. So, Beck, you're interviewing Ava in the backseat of a colleague's car outside of her workplace.
Yes. And I probably asked her the most ridiculous, interview question I have ever asked. Okay, I absolutely did. I've never asked this question again. But I was trying to get a real sense of who she was as a person. So I asked her, would she more likely be a runner or someone that did yoga? And now knowing Ava for almost 10 years, I can see what a ridiculous question that was.
And Ava, what was your response?
I think I said I don't do either, which I don't and didn't.
And haven't.
Okay. And so at this point, Beck, so what was your job at Mecca and what are you employing Ava to do?
So I looked after the signature line brands at Mecca, which is, the private label brands, and from a product development and a marketing point of view. And we really needed a gun to come and take over the Mecca Cosmetica line. And Ava came very highly recommended and was based in Sydney at the time. So I was trying to really understand, would this move for this young girl down to Melbourne be the right thing to do? So not that I was suggesting you had to come and do running or yoga. I guess I was really trying to, make sure I tried to get a picture of the whole person.
And so what year was this that the Mecca job interview was taking place?
2014.
2014, okay.
Yeah.
Are you born and bred Sydney?
Yeah, I'd lived in New York for a period and Beck had lived overseas as well. So I think you'd only recently been back in Melbourne too, hadn't you?
2 years.
Okay, so you come to Melbourne and then you're both building brands for Mecca. Now, so 2014, and you're involved in developing those products, or is it the marketing of the products?
Both.
The whole thing?
Yes.
Okay, so it's sort of a business unit within Mecca that you're working on.
100%. And you're basically operating as a general manager of a brand.
Yeah.
And you did get a lot of autonomy over that brand at the time.
So how do we go from having those jobs at Mecca to being entrepreneurs and business owners of a company called Ultra Violette?
I guess Mecca's a beautiful vantage point to see the retail experience, the consumer experience, the brand experience. You really get a front row seat to the best beauty brands in the world that they have on their shelves. The founders, the stories. So it was a really inspiring place. And I think naturally you do, like a lot of people, like, what if we had our own brand, or what if we did this? We'd kind of thought a few ideas, and that got more and more serious, I guess, as the conversations rolled on.
And so, Beck, were you at that point, so you're just throwing out ideas, would you catch up with Ava socially?
We did catch up socially. We had a brilliant team. We had lots of really great people. I think it was around about 2016 at this point where we'd thrown a few ideas around, and Ava was at that point where she said, right, let's get serious. This is the idea. This is what we're going to do. And she's very convincing. And I listened. So, yeah, that was how that conversation.
And what were your lives like individually? So 2016.
Yeah, it was very different. I think I was probably just 30 and single. So I had a lot less to lose. So when Beck's saying I was very convincing. I didn't have a family to care for. I didn't have, a mortgage to pay. Beck had 2 youngish children, a husband, a mortgage, family. And so we were at very different life stages at that time.
Okay.
And I think with a lot different kind of risk profile, I suppose.
So what was the pitch then? Like, how do you obviously have unbridled enthusiasm, but you have to convince Beck, who's got a very good job at a very good company, 2 young kids. Yeah. What do you say?
I definitely knew I needed Beck to do this. So it wasn't like, I'm going to do this without you, come on off. It definitely wasn't that. It was, I think we would just kind of like look at this opportunity. There is an opportunity here. And I think for Beck, I'm just like, that's a great idea, let's roll with it. Whereas I think working through it and seeing it come to life, we chipped away at that idea. And an idea, anyone can have an idea. It's in, executing it and actually doing it is what's pretty much most important, I would say.
And may I add the purpose in part of this podcast, because I think we all like to, if I could tell you all of my ideas. And I am still a wage slave, enjoying it very much, working for the Financial Review. But yes, we have ideas. It's just how do you turn an idea into a business? So the idea at this point, though, is to do sunscreen. It wasn't just to go and have a business. What was it that you saw in that category that you thought we could chase, Ava?
It was the skincare element. It was that everyday element that no one was talking about. Even in 2016, every sun care or sun brand was kind of shown in the context of the beach, of holidays. It was very functional. It was very seasonal. But no one was talking about sunscreen in the context of skincare and how it is actually the most important skincare product, anti-aging skincare product and skin health product that you can use every day, and it does need to be worn every day for it to be most effective. So it was kind of just bizarre to us that no one was really talking about sunscreen as an everyday product, and it was kind of, the ads were shown at December and people were talking about it in January. But they should still be talking about it in April and July and September.
Not only was sun playing in the ways that Ava has just described, but it was also predominantly sold in mass channels, in the supermarket, in the pharmacy. And obviously understanding how brand economics work, you know that they're not going to be getting the best formulations for what feel great on your skin. They're not going to be getting all of those extra bits and pieces that can make that experience pleasurable to the point where you'd want to wear it every day. So, I think both of us had seen enough of the industry to really just inherently get that this was where the opportunity lies.
So you decide that you will explore the opportunity. Is that fair to say? So let's actually think this could be a business here.
Yes.
So you're both still working at Mecca at this point. Yes. And so how do you grow a business that you haven't yet really started with full-time commitments?
I guess we felt enthused enough to say, let's make some time on the weekends in our spare time and start to really think through on paper, just loosely what this could look like. So we gave ourselves 6 months. We bought a whiteboard and we started to flesh out some thinking, and that got us to the point where we were both comfortable to take the next step, which is, okay, we can't develop this while we have full-time employment in the industry. We need to change our circumstances. We need to devote some serious time. That meant, I guess, the first leaping off point of making some changes and some commitments to this as an idea. We still hadn't piled a load of cash into some stock, but we were taking those steps forward. And I think that's the thing. You break it down to these small moments that at the time they were massive moments. They were really big commitments for us to make to continue to pursue this idea. It's not just when you flick on your Shopify site. There's lots of times up until that point.
So you decide you're going to throw in your jobs.
We were going to throw in that job,
yes,
but not careers.
Employment.
You're still going to be working.
We were still going to be earning money.
But who was going to pay the salary?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And so how does that conversation, Bet, go with your husband at the time?
Yeah, that was a tricky one. I actually didn't tell him straight away. And he'd also gone through a career change at the time and had gone from, a nice corporate job to something a little bit risky. So I definitely felt the pressure of maybe now's not the time with 2 small children and school fees and what have you to have both of us in risky professions. So I guess I needed to see a little bit more concrete evidence that this was going to work. So he really came on board when he could see the passion and enthusiasm. And I think he knew Ava a little bit, but he could definitely see that this was a great combo. So I think the individuals involved also helped him come over the line.
And my understanding from the early days was there was a third person involved in thinking about this business and going into business with you. What happened with that?
They were involved in the kind of very early stage, whiteboard, which, there are some of that stuff is who the brand is today, but a lot of it isn't. And they were involved in a few of those kind of meetings up front. And then when things kind of got serious, I think they were at a very different stage in their life and not at a stage in their life where they could kind of
jump off the springboard?
Sit comfortably with that level of risk.
Yeah. So in terms of the risks, so what happens at that point? So you're making a decision to build the business. How much money do you throw at it? So how do you get it off the ground?
I guess we'd had a bit of experience in terms of looking at cost of goods, and we could do a bit of a back of an envelope guess. This is how much we're going to need for stock. This is how much we're going to need for marketing. This is how much we need for legals. And did we both feel comfortable with that kind of a commitment? And could we find it from friends, family, savings, mortgages, in the back of the pockets? Where could we possibly find this cash? And look, there was not a lot of that in there because working with listed products like sunscreens, you have very large minimum order quantities and, warehousing, that type of thing. So both of us were committed enough to the idea. We knew enough about how much we needed to commit. And I think I hear this a lot when I talk to people that are also starting, businesses. Don't undercook that bit. And whilst we didn't have a lot of fat, we did have enough to buy the right amount of stock, do enough marketing. We kept things super lean, but we still invested in a great shareholder agreement and trademark protection. So we did invest in a few things that were, looking back now, I think really critical that we didn't cut corners on some really important things as well as stock and marketing.
So you've mentioned the sunscreen category is most people would remember from our childhood. It's thick, it's greasy, didn't like having to put it on. You hated mum coming near you with it. We got through it. And then your idea is to make a sunscreen that you want to use every day and can sit under makeup. In terms of just trying to find a formula, like there's not a recipe sheet sitting around on the internet. Well, maybe there is. Maybe you found it.
There probably is, actually. I'm sure if you Google, make sunscreen, you could find a YouTube clip somewhere. Yeah, we, as Beck mentioned, we had done this for many years, product development, not just at Mecca previously. And so we kind of knew where to go from a chemist point of view and a contract manufacturer to make it. And we also knew what products should feel like. We'd been in the beauty industry for so long and we knew what kind of products we wanted to put on our skin as consumers and what kind of products, from a formulation point of view in terms of feel and finish on the skin did well in a retailer.
And so how long did that take? Like how many? I'm assuming you put in your requirements and a manufacturer sends you back a sample and you put it on and I'm just going to assume that the first one wasn't the one.
Definitely not.
No, it took 2 years. And that product development process started with really sweeping the market of what were some benchmarks, what were some things that we loved, what were, talking to our friends, really going deep on that brief and then finding who the right people were that we wanted to work with and starting the process. And you're absolutely right. We launched with three facial skin screens, we call them. A combination of skincare and sunscreen was also a really important part of that development. Like, we needed to call this what it was, which is a new category. It's not the sun care category. It's not just the skincare category. Let's bring them together.
Yeah.
So you've thrown in the jobs. You're starting Ultra Violette. You're not cutting a wage at this point. What's the next step? What are you doing to get the business off the ground? It's one thing to have your idea and have a product. How do you get it into the hands of a consumer?
There's many more steps. I guess there's the packaging. The brand development was an equally important component of this, and making sure that brand, so Ultra Violette, was fun and engaging and not patronising and looked different to everything that we saw on the shelf. So bringing all those things together, finding suppliers for all of the packaging, bringing that together, finding warehouses. Ava was really instrumental in driving our e-commerce setup, and that kind of took us to January 2019 when we had some product in a warehouse. We had our Shopify site, we had our trademark, we had our brand, and we were ready to go.
Okay, so Beck, it's launch day. I don't know if there's like a big green button that is on your Shopify.
Kind of.
Yeah, that kind of is.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you just kind of, we done a little bit of press in the lead up, and there was a bit of chatter, like a small amount. I think we had 3,000 Instagram followers or something like that at the time. Shopify has this really cool function where if you make a sale, it makes this like cha-ching, like a sound every time there's a sale. And I think we were at my house.
We were at your kitchen table.
At my kitchen table, and we set it live, sent the email, and then the phones just started going cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching.
Well, that's good. Imagine if you click send.
I know.
And
but it's
crickets.
funny because the first, handful of times we were like, oh, I know that person. Beck was like, I know that person.
Yeah.
And then an hour later, we didn't know the people. I was like, I'd forwarded something. I think Beck had left at that point.
Yes.
So I was screenshotting emails and orders, and I was saying to her, do you know this person? She'd say, no, I don't. And we'd go, oh my God, it's someone we don't even know.
Not our friend or family.
Yeah. Someone we don't even know. We just turn it on and kind of thought, well, let's just see what happens. And we didn't really have a huge kind of launch strategy in terms of posters or like ads. We just had sent out. No, we didn't have any money. We just sent it out to a few influencers and some beauty editors that we kind of had come across in the past and had good relationships with, and people just started posting about it. And because at the time there wasn't anything else like it. There was nothing else. No one else was making sunscreen fun and, sexy.
So Ava, Beck, you've launched a sunscreen business. It's 2019, but of course we will move headlong in, you won't know it at the time, to the pandemic, and for months on end people will be locked in their houses. We'll take a break, but when we come back I want to talk to you about how you manage a business based on people being outdoors in the sun when they're locked down during a pandemic. And Ava, I think I do want to know whether you've actually been converted to running or yoga. We'll find out after the break.
Hi, I'm James Thompson, the host of Chanticleer, a weekly news breakdown of all things business, finance and markets. Every Friday, Anthony McDonald and I go behind the doors of corporate Australia to give you our unvarnished analysis. Search and follow Chanticleer.
Beck, Ava, we've walked through the stages of this company. You're at Mecca, thrown in the jobs. Beck, you've spoken to your husband, convinced him about the merits of you not earning a wage. Ava, your boots in. So we've gotten through the, I guess, leaping off into the deep end of setting up a business. Let's talk then about how you grow that business from having a few thousand people in there to now where it is today. As it's growing, the pandemic hits. Beck, tell me what happened to sales at that point. It's March 2020. The former Prime Minister is saying, yep, sorry, no one can come in and out.
No, borders are shut. We'd only just signed with Sephora in Australia. So what it did do is it delayed the launch that we were going to have into our first bricks and mortar stores. So up until that point, we'd been online only. And I think that was a key point. We had our own e-commerce channel. We had also launched with Adore Beauty that had, the country's biggest skincare database. We were doing really well with them. But we knew we needed to have the product on shelves because some people would not want to risk buying online as their first experience with Ultra Violette. So bricks and mortar was really important to us. We had a really great partnership proposed to us with Sephora, and that was all hurtling full steam ahead, February 2020, March 2020, and then, as you said, the pandemic hit. Sure, sales didn't come on in terms of bricks and mortar sales as quickly as we would have expected, but we hadn't known those, so it wasn't like we missed anything. And the great thing is that Aussies and Australian women in particular really got the message very quickly. They understood that this wasn't a story about putting something on your face just to go outside even. It was something that you put on your face every day because you were caring for your skin. And regardless of whether you were running in the park or sat beside a window, which a lot of us were, those rays were coming in and doing damage to your skin. So, I really credit the intellect of, the Australian consumer because they got straight away that this was important. They became more used to shopping online, and we were a brand that was digital first. So we were well enabled to be able to continue to fulfill orders and speak to our customers.
There was almost a skincare boom that happened as a result of that. I think people were looking for some sort of self-care, something. It was just being locked in your house, particularly for those who have children and are locked in the house with their children. It was a stressful time. So if it was the little things that people did you notice that within the business? Did you think sales would sort of fall and dip, and then they actually sort of outpaced your growth expectations? And then if that happened, then how do you pivot to make sure you've got the stock?
At the beginning, we had no idea what sales were going to do. I remember talking to Beck and our CFO, and they, she'd done some disaster kind of forecasts. I think it was one that was 60% of our forecast, one that was 20% of our forecast, and then one that was nothing. So we literally were not making any money.
How did that feel looking at that forecast?
Scary, but we had no idea. But then I think there's something that in both of us that we kind of quite like a challenge like that. And I think we felt a little bit buoyed by that.
Bring it on?
Yeah, kind of. And also people were investing in skincare. People were going hard on peels and, one of the only outings you could do potentially was go to the doctor. So people were getting retinols and doing Tret and doing all sorts of things to their skin where they needed to wear sunscreen. And also don't forget, in Melbourne particularly, we were allowed outside for 1 hour. So people were still going outside for that hour and needing sunscreen. So there was orders coming in as to supply stores, like Sephora stores with stock.
Yeah.
So I don't think...
We had orders coming in.
Yeah.
We had enough stock on hand. Again, going back to, we had pretty big minimums we had to start this business with, so that got us through. And we also didn't have a lot of fixed overheads. We were really lean. We didn't have an office. We didn't have many staff. So we were able to really scale up or down. 12 months later would have been a different story for us, but we were still so young. We were working from home and thankfully we did have a good control of our finances.
So Beck, let's talk about the next stage for Ultra Violette. You've tipped in the savings. You've got the product. There's some cash flow coming in, but can the business keep functioning with the cash flow you've got? How do you grow it?
So the business can keep functioning with the cash flow it's got in. We were born in a market that's smaller globally than other major beauty markets, and we really want this business to be global. So in 2023 we are looking to bring on an investor so that we can adequately scale the brand and take on some of the bigger markets in the world. We've got great opportunities right in front of us in Europe. We've partnered with Sephora in 12 countries, and we want to make sure we don't miss that opportunity. So we're really looking for a great strategic partner to come on board from both a capital point of view, but also from a collaborative point of view so that we can learn and grow quickly.
Okay, before we talk about that investor, let's talk about Sephora though. Like, how on earth do you just get in there?
Well, I don't know if you just get in there. I guess Ava and I had a background in beauty retail, so we were very fortunate that we understood from a retailer's point of view what is it that they're after for a brand. And I'd say those things are they're looking to add brands that don't cannibalise sales or cannibalise brands that they currently have in their lineup. So having a really good understanding of who your competition is in store and being able to converse with the retailer of what you're bringing in addition to what they've already got is really critical. As well, having an understanding of who is their customer, so who's shopping in those stores, what are they, a makeup customer, a skincare, hair care, fragrance, are you a clear basket ad so that you can really fit seamlessly into everybody's shopping behaviour, because retailers want to hear that you're adding value to them. And because skin screen is a relatively new category, it was quite wide open for us to be able to say every customer that comes in and buys skincare should be buying a skin screen product, and Ultra Violette's well positioned from a price point and a positioning point to be able to basket add to your customers. So it was being able to speak their language that I think really helped fast track those conversations with them.
Now, you could speak their language because you both worked at Mecca and you're not in Mecca. Can I just infer from that discussion then it's because Sephora has the global footprint, so you went that way? Or?
Absolutely, and they've been a really fabulous partner for us and were great at nurturing us as an independent brand. So, yeah.
Okay, let's go back to that investor.
Mm-hmm.
What are you looking for?
Oh, it's almost like speed dating in a very in a very raw sense. It starts off as speed dating, it then gets into dating. And again, similar to what we were saying about a retailer, looking for those real partnership cues. Who's someone that we can work with? Who's someone that will add to our culture and not try and change that? And by that I mean, being really supportive of the women that we have in our workplace, the working mums, the style of work that we do and how we go about that. But most importantly, we're very conscious that we only have certain capabilities when it comes to scaling a global brand. So we really are looking for someone that's been there, done that, maybe bring some experts into us, help with our ability to have a really robust strategy and be a real partner on the things that we know are going to come our way that are going to be challenging and difficult, and hopefully do that with a smile on their face and a good sense of humour.
And the brand itself, can you give me a sense of the scale? So we've gone from, I think you mentioned 3,000 followers on Instagram, the parents, siblings, friends buy your brand, and then you managed to get some non-family members to buy it. How many people are buying it now? Give me a sense of what this business looks like.
So, it's really hard to pinpoint, but, last financial year we finished at around 100% growth on the year before and, just over $12 million in revenue. So really just scratching the surface of what this opportunity looks like globally.
Okay. So what has been maybe the most challenging time in the business to date?
I mean, I know that I personally felt really challenged at that point, probably end of 2021, where we were still being, locked in our houses here in Melbourne. The business needed to scale with a team, and that team needed to come together. So at this point, we had hired a few people, but we couldn't go into the office and we couldn't work collaboratively. And I found that really tough because we were missing out on opportunities to work faster and smarter and come together, and we physically couldn't. So I found that a really tough time personally.
And Ava?
I think the bigger you get, the bigger the problems get, the more complex they become. And so I also had a child in 2022. So ever since coming back from maternity leave, for me personally, has felt quite challenging.
And when did you come back from mat leave?
I went to Asia 3 months after my son was born, so on a bit of a press tour of Southeast Asia. Yes. We launched into Sephora in July 2022. So in August 2022, I went to Southeast Asia. Flew into Kuala Lumpur and then did Thailand, and then my son and my husband met me in Singapore. Yeah, that wasn't the easiest. I think I was just a bit blind going into it. But I think juggling a child and a business and, returning to work part-time as a founder is impossible.
Yeah, I was going to say, how are you going with that? Because I could imagine there is a struggle. Like I'm not even a founder, and I came back after the birth of my daughter part-time, and I'll hand on heart, so I suck at working part-time.
Yeah. I never really realised how hard having children and working was, and I don't think you will understand until you are in a position. And I don't mean for everyone having a child and working is hard. I think for women having a child and working is hard, and I think that's probably also another podcast. But
I know. I feel like we need to have the series on why, the torment we go through.
I guess it's a reality of female founders.
Yeah.
You know, there are unique problems that you have to grapple with. One beautiful moment, Ava said to me after you'd come back from maternity leave. She said, now I know why you're so obsessed about getting an office because and you needed to get out of the house and you needed to work somewhere else, because up until that point you had actively said, I don't want to ever work in an office.
Yeah, I'd said
I'm
that.
just going to have a free life and work from home. And I was like, okay. And now
Ava, the mother, is like, get me the office. I want to lock on the door.
I think I'm there pretty much. I'm probably there
more than me.
I'm glad you raised it though, because when we were planning this podcast, I didn't want to dwell too much on the fact that women have babies and children, because I wanted to approach this like I would anyone else. If you were two blokes sitting here, we would talk very similar questions about building a business, and I probably wouldn't dwell on the fact that they had children. Men don't often get asked these sorts of questions. No. But at the same time, I do recognise as a mother myself, there are just things that happen as women that we just take on board a lot more stuff, rightly or wrongly. It just happens. And I think when you are a founder, the fact that you do have children and you've got to juggle this, you don't get to necessarily get the flexible workplace that other people might seek out when they're in their child raising years, so rearing years, I should say. So it does sound like something that is going to evolve in time.
And I think too, it's also about not pretending that it's not there.
Yeah.
And about saying, we feel a real sense of responsibility. So what are we doing in our business to enable women that aren't founders but that work in our team to be able to be successful and contribute and overcome the obstacles that are out there. So there's a positive aspect to it as well that is quite exciting to have the opportunity to shape things differently.
Yeah.
And so how are you doing things within the business? What do you tell people? So Julianne Sprague, I'm here. I'm here for my job interview. I'm keen. Just FYI, I've got this small child, and is there a way that I can manage pickups?
Yeah, look, I think it's setting an example ourselves, but also creating the space. And it's things that are basic, like let's not have meetings at 3:00 in the afternoon. Like that's a no-brainer. How can we structure our times around that so that on the odd occasion that, you know what, we absolutely do need to have a meeting at 3:00, then people haven't already burnt all of their good favours in picking up the kids. They're available. And you know what, 99% of the time you've got the ability to be flexible.
And I think the other thing that's really important is that you either have to be flexible, and we've got a lot of new mums who are kind of struggling with that daycare illness.
That one to the first year where you think you've got freedom, and then all of a sudden then you're paying for care that they're not in.
They're not in, and then you're also sick, and then you're there. So
it's a special time, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the alternative is these women, because it is women most of the time, and that's unfortunate, but it's just how it is. But these women say it's too hard. I can't work. The alternative is you're either flexible, which, as Beck said, you have the ability to be 99% of the time, or you risk losing great people, and that's just not a risk either of us are willing to take.
So speaking of the flexibility, and there's the juggle, there's the home life, and there's building a company, I did want to ask both of you maybe for a productivity hack or something that you might do every day that allows you to get more out of your day or do more with less, whatever it might be. Ava?
I think being on your phone can be such a distraction. So I try, when I'm trying to really beeline through, stuff, I have to put my phone away. And also, I think it kind of links into what we were saying. The office for me, it's productive. It allows me to be productive, but it's also a bit of a distraction because you are then around everyone else. But if I were at home with my son and my husband or the nanny or whoever was with him, I wouldn't get anything done. So I think sometimes, especially when you do have young children, removing yourself from that home environment really helps me.
And Beck,
I think the other productivity hack that I would suggest is knowing when you work best.
Yeah.
And I think what's been great after COVID is that we've unlocked this ability to be flexible in terms of where and how we work. And let's use that to our advantage and say, I'm most productive after the kids have gone to bed, so I'm going to do 2 great hours of really good work at that point. That's so valuable versus having to be rigid in 9 to 5 and, I might have a 3 o'clock slump. Well, then go for a walk or go and, read a book to your child or go and do something that really doesn't put you in a position that you're not so productive time then and use it later. So I think it's about trying to unlock when you personally are productive and really aligning your work day around it.
Fantastic. Beck, is there a book or a podcast you might have listened to or a book that you've read recently? It doesn't actually have to be recent, actually, but is there something you could recommend to people listening here to delve into?
The book I really enjoyed, and the fact that I couldn't actually read it, I had to listen to it as an audiobook, is The Hard Thing About Hard Things. It really made me feel better that my hard things weren't as hard as some hard things could be. So that was a great perspective for me.
There's nothing more grounding than finding someone's in a worse situation
I know,
than
it was
you,
fantastic.
isn't it? It's terrible to relish in someone else's pain, but I understand the psychology of it. So it's The Hard
Thing About Hard Things, Ben Horowitz.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
author.
Ava?
I recently listened to, I think it's Diary of a CEO, and Stephen Bartlett. Yeah, he interviewed Whitney Wolfe, who's the founder of...
That was a great episode.
Yeah, of Bumble. First female founder, I think, and CEO of a publicly listed company.
That's hit $1 billion. Yeah.
Yeah. She's very inspirational. And I also met my husband on Bumble. So
Did you?
yeah. So I have a special
Connection
to the brand, and I also think they do amazing things. So
I love it when a love story intersects with a business story.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen very often.
It's very
Not often
rare.
enough.
Yes, you're just like ding, ding, ding in the financial review. This newsroom, we're like, yes. I did want to perhaps finish this discussion. It may be a little bit reflective, but also looking out. If you want to start a business in 2023, what are the 1 or 2 things you need?
I think you need self-belief, because there are lots of times when you're not going to have it. And I feel like I've said that a lot this week, because even now, like nearly 4 years in, we need a lot of self-belief at the moment. But that's always the case. And that determination to just keep going. And we were reflecting on this yesterday, and we were looking back at things that felt so insurmountable 3 years ago. Now we're like, oh gosh, that was nothing. And I'm sure there are going to be things, ahead of us that feel insurmountable. But I guess the common thread between your past and your future is just keep going.
Ava?
I mean, this is something I always tell everyone, that sometimes done is better than perfect. Like, there's going to be so much stuff that you need to get through, and sometimes just getting it done, it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be done. And the other thing I would say is probably just be prepared and get good at making a lot of decisions. And you have to make the decisions, and you have to make them quickly. And if it's not you making them, it's going to be someone else. Someone's going to decide for you. So it's better that you're in control of making those decisions and being comfortable with that.
Well, I'm very glad you made the decision to come in and have a chat with me.
We're very glad too.
I'm
thank you.
glad I got to understand the business, and I really thank you for your time and for drilling into me that even if I'm inside by the window, sunscreen.
UVA rays, they'll get you wherever you are.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Thanks for listening to Female Founders, and be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And for more insight on entrepreneurs, subscribe to The Financial Review. Go to afr.com/subscribe. This podcast was presented by Julianne Sprague, produced and edited by Lap Fan. Our theme is by Alex Gow, and executive producer is Fiona Buffini.
The Australian Financial Review.